The last time I felt my Rolex Daytona on my wrist was at my cousin Chloe's wedding reception. Music pulsed, champagne flowed, and my $87,000 stainless steel grail watch caught the fairy lights every time I raised my glass. It was more than a timepiece. It was the symbol of my first seven-figure exit. My dad's proud handshake when I bought it. My daily reminder that hustle pays off. I took it off for 1 second. My little nephew, Jake, was crying a chocolate stain on his tiny tux. I knelt, used my handkerchief to wipe it, and slid the watch into my blazer's inner pocket for safekeeping. I draped the jacket over my chair. When I returned 3 minutes later, the jacket was there. The pocket was empty. My heart didn't drop. It shattered. A cold void opened in my chest. Panic, frantic searches under tables, in the grass. Family members forming a concerned, useless huddle. And there was Liam, my cousin. My best friend since we built tree forts together. He was the most vocal, the most outraged. Who would do this? Here, among family. Jules, we'll find it. I swear we'll find it. He looked me dead in the eye and vowed to help. His sincerity was an Oscar-worthy performance. The watch was gone. I filed a report. The insurance investigator was cynical. At a family event. It's almost always someone you know. He glanced at the guest list. I defended everyone, especially Liam. He'd been by my side all night. Weeks of numbness followed. Then, my private investigator, a grizzled man named Vance, I'd hired on a stubborn hunch, mailed me a single image. It was a still from a pawn shop security camera 40 miles away. Time-stamped the day after the wedding. The image was clear as day, my Rolex on the velvet pad, and the man sliding it across the counter, his profile unmistakable even from the side, was Liam. The receipt was attached. He'd sold it for $55,000. No questions asked, the betrayal was a physical blow. The rage was immediate, volcanic, but it cooled faster than I expected, hardening into something crystalline and sharp. A plan. Going to the police would get my insurance payout. It would cause a messy, whispered family feud. Liam would cry, give a sob story, and my aunt would beg me to drop it. He'd get a slap on the wrist. I'd get a check and a broken family dot. No, I didn't want money. I didn't want quiet justice. I wanted the truth to be seen. I wanted him to confess, to feel the weight of what he'd done in front of the very people he'd lied to. I wanted to orchestrate his downfall with the same precision. He'd used to steal from me. The stage was already set. Our grandmother's 70th anniversary party, 6 weeks away. The entire dynasty would be there. I called Liam. My voice was thick with manufactured grief. The insurance came through, man. It's over. I can't let this ruin us. You're my brother. His relief was a palpable, oily thing through the phone. Jules, I've been so sick over this. You're a bigger man than me. I smiled, the expression cold in my empty apartment. Yeah, well, I'm trying to move forward. Actually, I'm putting the insurance money into a new venture. A silent partner in a private equity deal. It's a guaranteed double in 12 months. I could hear his breath hitch. Greed, his oldest and most reliable sin, perked up. That's insane. It's who you know, I said, layering the bait. The guy running it, his name is Marcus. He's cautious. Only works with family offices and close-knit circles. I mentioned you might have capital to park. He's interested. Said he'd meet you at Grandma's party. The hook was set. The bait was the exact sum he'd stolen, promising even more. The pressure cooker was the family reunion. The trap was his own avarice. I was about to spring it in front of everyone who ever loved him. The insurance payout felt like dirt in my hands. It was a direct deposit for $75,000 a number that meant nothing and everything. It wasn't the watch. It would never be the watch. But it was fuel. The first piece of my trap. I let a week pass, then called Liam. I made my voice sound weathered, resigned, but with a forced undercurrent of excitement. The money cleared. It's done. Look, life's too short, you know? You're my family. You're a saint, Jules. A literal saint. he breathed, the relief in his voice so thick it was nauseating. I'm no saint. I'm just trying to move forward. Actually, that's why I called. This private equity deal I mentioned, it's moving. My guy Marcus wants to meet potential limited partners. The minimum buy-in is $50K. I let the number hang in the air so close to the 55 he'd gotten for the watch. I told him about you. About your knock for seeing value. He's intrigued. 50,000. Liam's voice was a mix of awe and immediate calculation. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. That's significant. It's a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Liam, the fund is targeting distressed luxury assets, buying high-end collateral from banks at pennies on the dollar. Marcus has an inside track. He projects a 200% return in 18 months. I fed him the lie I'd crafted with Vance, my pie, who had a contact that could fake a whole investment firm's website and paperwork. But it's hyper-confidential. If this leaks, the big funds swarm and we get nothing. You cannot tell a soul. Not your mom, not your girlfriend, especially not at Grandma's party. Marcus will be there as my guest. You can meet him, feel him out yourself. The hook was set deep now. I dangled the exact fruit of his theft back in front of him, polished and promising to multiply. The pressure of the secret. The allure of the family event where he'd be validated as an investor. The next phase was architecture. I met Marcus for lunchasharp.com. Former finance guy Vance had on retainer for such performances. We crafted his backstory. A Wharton grad who'd made his fortune quietly, valued discretion above all. We rehearsed. I had Marcus send me encrypted, jargon-filled emails about fund structuring and asset acquisition pipelines, which I would then accidentally forward to Liam, or leave open on my screen when Liam came over. Then I applied the screw. Vance had gotten me the contact for the pawn shop broker. For a modest fee, the broker agreed to play his part. He called Liam from a blocked number. Mr. Evans, this is David from Sterling Financial Compliance. We're auditing a series of high-value, cash-only transactions from last quarter flagged under new anti-money laundering protocols. Your transaction at Horology Haven for $55,000 in cash has been selected for review. I listened on a recorded line Vance had patched in. Liam's panic was instantaneous. What? That was a private sale of a personal item. Understood, sir. To clear the flag, we require a notarized affidavit of ownership and provenance, explaining the source of the asset. Without it, we are required to file a suspicious activity report with FinCEN and the IRS. You have 30 days to provide documentation. The broker was cool, professional, immovable. Liam stammered, promised to send something, and hung up. He called me within the hour, voice thin with fear. Jules, you ever heard of Sterling Financial Compliance? I feigned mild concern. Vaguely. New regulatory thing. Why? You didn't sell anything big lately, did you? I heard they're cracking down on cash deals over 10 grand. Nightmare. His silence was confession enough. Just some old gear. It's fine. I'll handle it. But the terror was there. He now had the IRS on one side and a golden secret investment opportunity on the other. He needed that cash to be clean to use it. He needed that investment to make the whole sordid mess profitable. The final touch was environmental. Grandma's 70th was at my uncle's sprawling manicured estate, place of nostalgia and perceived safety. I helped with the seating plan, positioning Liam directly across from me at the long decorated table. I placed Marcus next to Grandma, the seat of honor, ensuring everyone would have to engage with him. The day arrived. The estate was strewn with lights. The air smelled of jasmine and grilled seafood. Family from across the country milled, their laughter a soundtrack of normalcy that felt surreal to me. I wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up. My bare wrist was a silent, screaming accusation. Liam arrived, looking handsome but strained. He hugged me, clapping my back too hard. Big day, cause, he whispered, eyes scanning for Marcus. The biggest? I smiled. Play it cool. Marcus hates desperation. I watched him navigate the crowd. I circulated accepting muted condolences on the watch, deftly pivoting each conversation to my exciting new investment fund. I was laying the groundwork, making my renewed fortune the topic of the day. Dinner was served. Laughter rang. Toasts were made to Grandma and Grandpa's 70 years. The warmth in the tent was genuine, which made what I was about to do feel even more brutal, and even more necessary as dessert plates were being cleared. I stood gently tapping my knife against my crystal water glass. The conversations dwindled. 100 faces, lit by candlelight, turned to me. Before we all get too sentimental and start roasting Grandpa, I began, earning a warm chuckle. I just wanted to say thank you. For this family, for the love in this tent. I looked around, my gaze landing on Liam, who offered an encouraging nod. This family has been my foundation. And when you lose something foundational, it shakes you. I held up my bare wrist. A sympathetic murmur rippled down the table. But family also helps you rebuild, I continued, my voice strengthening. I was able to move forward to invest in a new future. I gestured to Marcus, who gave a humble, small wave. Thanks to my friend Marcus here and his new fund, I'm turning loss into growth. And I'm not alone. I'm proud to say my cousin Liam has also decided to come aboard as an investor. Liam, stand up. Liam stood, a flush of pride and acute anxiety on his face. He raised his glass. 2 new beginnings, he said, his voice slightly too high. 2 new beginnings. The crowd echoed, drinking as they sat. I didn't. I reached into my pocket. You know, I said, my voice dropping but carrying in the sudden quiet. Marcus's fund is all about uncovering true value in unexpected places. It's about forensically val clarity. I pulled out a small black remote. Sometimes clarity is shocking. I pressed a button. The large white party tent had a discrete projector screen at one end. It flickered to life. On it, in horrifying, high-definition clarity, was the paused security still from Horology Haven? Liam's face? My Rolex on the counter between him and the broker. A collective. Sharp intake of breath sucked the air from the tent. Forks froze midway to mouths. Smiles died. Liam's face went from flushed to sheet white. He stared at his own giant, guilty image. I pressed another button. The audio from the broker's compliance call filled the tent. Liam's nervous voice, confirming the sale, lying about the watch being a gift. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a living thing, heavy and cold. I looked only at Liam. She sold a piece of my father's pride, a symbol of everything I've built, for $55,000. You looked me in the eye and led the search. Then you were going to take that stolen money and invest it in a lie to clean your conscience and line your pockets further. My voice was calm, lethally quiet. So I need you to answer in front of our entire family at the home where we grew up together. Why, Liam? And what could you possibly say for yourself? Every head swiveled to him. The trap woven from greed, fear, and family pressure had sprung. The luxurious tent was now a courtroom. The verdict was in his own exposed, petrified face. The shocked silence of the family was the gavel. Pounding down, the silence in the tent was a physical force, pressing down on everyone. It was the sound of 100 people holding their breath, 100 worlds shattering at once. All eyes were locked on Liam, who stood frozen beside his chair, his face a grotesque mask of terror and disbelief. On the giant screen behind him, his own guilty face was a monument to betrayal. I let the silence stretch. I let him drown in it. I watched the flicker in his eyes as he scrambled for an exit that didn't exist. He looked at his mother, my Aunt Claire, whose face had crumpled from confusion into dawning, horrified comprehension. He looked at his father, whose jaw was clenched so tight a muscle throbbed in his cheek. He looked at our grandmother, whose hand was over her mouth, her eyes wide with a pain I felt responsible for causing, even now. Finally, a sound broke the void. It was a choked, wet, Gasp. It was Liam. It's not what it looks like, he stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. He took a step back, as if he could physically distance himself from the image. That's photoshopped. Jules, why would you do this? It was a pathetic, desperate strike. I didn't move. I simply pressed another button on the remote. The screen changed. Now it showed a scanned copy of the pawn shop receipt, with his signature clearly visible at the bottom. Next to it, a bank deposit slip showed the $55,000 cash deposit into his checking account the same day. The documents were stamped with the shop's logo. The broker is named Carl, I said, my voice still calm, cutting through the thick air. He's prepared to testify. The shop's ledgers are subpoena ready. The serial number on that receipt matches my Rolex, the one Dad held when he shook my hand. I looked at my father, who sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable stone. The one you helped me look for, Liam? Aunt Claire found her voice, a shattered whisper. Liam, tell me that's not true. Tell me you didn't. The dam broke. Liam's bravado collapsed. His shoulders hunched. And the tears that came weren't the performative ones from the wedding search. They were real. Panicked, selfish tears. I was in trouble, he blurted out, his voice rising to a wail. I had debts, bad ones, the guys I owed. They weren't messing around, Mom. I needed cash fast. So you stole from family. My uncle's voice boomed, sharp with a fury I'd never heard. From Jules. After everything he's done for you, I was going to pay it back. Liam cried, looking at me now, pleading. Jules, I swear. The investment. I was going to use the profits to buy it back. I had a lead on a similar model. It was a temporary thing. I almost admired the lie. It was an attempt to retrofit a narrative of redemption onto his crime. But the trap had been built too well. The investment was a fiction, Liam, I said, my tone devoid of mercy. Marcus isn't a fund manager. He's a consultant I hired. The fund doesn't exist. There was never any 200% return. It was a box canyon. And you walked right into it because you saw a chance to make the money you stole worth even more. The second wave of shock hit the room. Whispers erupted. They weren't just looking at a thief now. They were looking at a fool. A greedy, short-sighted fool who'd been played at his own game. Liam's face went from white to a sickly gray. The last pillar of his imagined escape crumbled. He had no story left. He looked around the tent at the sea of disgust, disappointment, and shattered trust. There was no sympathy, only a cold, collective judgment. You set me up, he breathed, the realization finally dawning. You did all this. I revealed you, I corrected coldly. You set yourself up the moment you put my watch in your pocket. I just arranged the lighting so everyone could see. My father stood up then. He didn't shout. He didn't even look at Liam. He looked at me. His gaze complex, there was pain. Profound disappointment in a nephew he'd loved, but also a grim, unspoken understanding of what I'd had to do. Then he turned to my uncle, Robert Clare. This is your son. You deal with him. But he is not welcome in my home or near my son until this is made right. He then looked at Liam, and his voice was like winter. The watch. Where is it? Liam was sobbing openly now, undone. The money. The debt? It's gone. The watch. The pawn shop holds them for 90 days. Then they sell them to a wholesaler. It might already be gone. A fresh wave of nausea hit me. The finality of it. It might be melted down, its parts scattered. The thought was a new, different kind of loss. It was my grandmother who spoke next. Her voice, usually soft and melodic, was clear and strong, cutting through the chaos. Then you will get a second job. You will work day and night. You will not take a vacation. You will not buy a new shirt. Until you have saved every penny of that $87,000 and given it to Julian. Not the pawn price. The value. You understand me, Liam? It wasn't a question. It was a decree. The matriarch had spoken. Liam could only nod, utterly broken. The party was over. The celebration of 70 years had become a funeral for trust. People began to leave quietly, avoiding eye contact with Liam, offering me silent, somber pats on the shoulder. The tent emptied, leaving only the immediate family amidst the ruins of half-eaten cake and wilting flowers. Aunt Claire approached me, her eyes redraw. "Julian, I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. I will make sure he pays you. Every cent." I nodded, feeling suddenly exhausted. "It's not about the money, Aunt Claire. It never was." She hugged me, a tight, trembling hug, and then followed my uncle as they led their shattered son away. I was left alone with my parents and Marcus, who was quietly packing his laptop. My father put a hand on my shoulder. "That was brutal, son." "It was necessary," I said, but the conviction felt hollow. The victory was ashes. Was it? My mother asked softly, her eyes on the no-blank screen. "Do you feel better?" I looked at my bare wrist. I thought of the watch, possibly gone forever. I thought of the cousin I'd grown up with, now a stranger etched in permanent shame. I thought of the silence that would now live in our family, a new, uncomfortable one. "No," I answered honestly. "I don't feel better. I just feel. Sure that I knew who he was. Sure that the family now knew. Sure that the wound was clean, even if it would leave a massive scar. The trap had worked perfectly. It had shocked everyone. It had exposed the truth with surgical public precision. And as I stood in the wreckage, I realized the person most shocked by the cold, calculating person I'd had to become to build it, was me. The days that followed were a study in quiet aftermath. The vibrant, gossipy family group chats went deathly silent. The Instagram posts from the anniversary party were all carefully cropped to exclude Liam, or simply deleted. A familial curtain had been drawn, separating before from after. My phone buzzed, not with congratulations on a masterful trap, but with awkward, somber calls from aunts and uncles. Their voices hushed as if someone had died. In a way, someone had. Liam was exiled. My father's decree was law. I heard through the strained grapevine that he'd moved out of his stylish downtown apartment and into a friend's couch. Aunt Claire had frozen the modest trust fund from our grandparents that he lived on. Grandma's ordered to repay the full $87,000 hung over him like a guillotine. He got a second job as a night stalker at a big box store on top of his middling day job in sales. His social media, once a curated reel of brunches and beach days, went dark. I should have felt vindicated. I had orchestrated the ultimate consequence. I had the moral high ground, the family support, and the looming promise of financial restitution. But the taste was bitter. My apartment, a symbol of my success, felt sterile. The bare spot on my wrist ached with a phantom weight. The victory was a hollow, echoing room. The only thing left of the plan was the watch itself. The possibility of its survival was a tiny, nagging hook in my mind. The pawn shop holds them for 90 days. Liam's tearful words. It hadn't been 90 days yet. There was a slim, almost cruel thread of hope. I couldn't go myself. My presence would drive the price into the stratosphere if it was still there. So I sent Vance my pie. He was the perfect emissary, dispassionate, professional, with the demeanor of a bored historian. "Just see if it's there," I instructed. "If it is, don't engage. Just get the details." He returned 2 days later, his expression typically unreadable. He slid a single clear photo from his phone across my kitchen island. It was my Daytona. In a glass case at the back of Horology Haven, it looked like a prisoner. The price tag next to it was a punch to the gut. $79,999. "They got it from the wholesaler," Vance said in his gravelly monotone. Liam's 90 days lapsed. Shop sold it to their distributor, then bought it back for the retail market. They know what they have. They're asking top of market. It's clean. No paperwork trail back to the theft. $80,000. Almost the exact insurance payout sitting uselessly in my account. To buy back what was already mine. The injustice of it was a white-hot coal in my chest. I could sue the shop, but that would take years, and their paperwork with Liam was likely shifty enough to create doubt. It was a moral morass I didn't have the energy to navigate. Then, a week later, an envelope arrived at my office. No return address. My name was written in a familiar sloppy script that made my heart thud dully. Inside was a single folded sheet of lined paper and a cashier's check. The check was $4. 3,212.17. It was from Liam. The note was brief. Jules' first payment. From my night job. Before taxes, it's not much. It will never be enough. I see the watch in my sleep. On your wrist, then on that velvet pad. I don't expect you to read this. I just need to send it. The amount was so pitiful, so specific. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a scraping of the barrel, the tangible proof of his new, grinding reality. It didn't spark pity. It ignited a cold, frustrated fury. At this rate, repaying the principal would take him over 2 years. The watch would be long gone, sold to some collector in another country. I stared at the check. A plan began to form. Not a trap this time, a trade. A brutal, pragmatic transaction. I requested a meeting with my aunt and uncle. We met at a quiet, neutral cafe. They looked older, worn thin by shame. The watch is still at the pawn shop, I stated bluntly. They want $80,000 for it. Aunt Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Uncle Robert closed his eyes, pained. Liam's payments? At this rate, the watch will be gone before he pays back a fraction. I don't want his pity money over the next decade. I want my watch back. What are you saying, Julian? Uncle Robert asked, his voice weary. I'm saying I will use the insurance money to buy back my own property. A disgusting irony, I know. I took a breath. And in exchange, Liam's debt to me will be considered paid in full. Not at $87,000. At the $80,000 I spend to retrieve it. They were silent, stunned. But I continued, my voice hardening. That debt doesn't vanish. It transfers. To you. You will take over the obligation from your son. You will pay me back on a schedule we agree on. No interest. But it will be paid. It was ruthless. It was holding the parents accountable for the son. But they were accountable. They had raised him, indulged him, turned a blind eye to his entitled streaks for years. This was the consequence, rippling out. Aunt Claire began to cry silently. Uncle Robert nodded, a slow, heavy gesture of acceptance. That's fair, Julian. It's more than fair. We will sign whatever you need. There's one more condition, I said. The hardest part. Liam gets therapy. For his gambling, his entitlement, his pathological lying. You provide proof of enrollment and attendance. If he stops the payment plan from you, doubles. This isn't just about money. It's about him not doing this to someone else. They agreed. We drew up a simple agreement at a lawyer's office the next day. The weight in the room was immense, but it was a clean, contractual weight, with the signed agreement in my briefcase. I walked into Horology Haven. The bell on the door jingled with fake cheer. The same broker, Carl, recognized me immediately from the security stills. His professional smile tightened. Mr. Carter, I wondered if you'd come. The Daytona? In the back case? I'm here to buy it. He didn't move. It's a beautiful piece. Market price is firm. I'm not here to negotiate the price, I said, my voice flat. I placed my bank draft on the counter. I'm here to negotiate the story, his eyebrow raised. You have a record of purchasing it from a wholesaler. I have a record of it being stolen from me and sold here by my cousin. I can make the next year of your life a parade of police inquiries and civil discovery. Or you take this draft, I take my property, and we both walk away. Your choice. Carl looked at the draft, then at my face. He saw I wasn't bluffing. The cost of fighting min time and lawyers, in reputation, outweighed the few thousand he might haggle for. He gave a curt nod. I'll get the box. 5 minutes later, I was back on the sidewalk, a familiar blue box in my hand. I didn't open it. I got into my car and drove to the coast. to the same cliff overlook I'd gone to after the wedding. There, with the ocean wind whipping around me, I opened the box. The watch lay nestled in white satin. It was the same. It was different. It had a history now it was never meant to have. A story of betrayal, of a trap, of a family broken. I picked it up. The weight was anchor and albatross. I didn't put it on. I held it in my palm. The cold metal warming against my skin. I had it back. I had achieved what I set out to do. Expose the thief, reclaim what was mine. But as I looked at it, all I could see was the cost. The silent family gatherings to come. The wary look in my aunt's eyes. The hollowed-out shell of the cousin I once knew. The trap had shocked everyone. But the aftermath, this quiet transactional resolution, was the real punishment. For him, for his parents. And for me, forever changed as the man who could, and would, engineer such a ruthless, perfect retaliation. I slipped the watch back into the box and closed the lid. The click of the latch was the final sound in the saga. A clean, sharp, and deeply lonely sound. The blue box sat on my dresser for a week. A silent, expensive monument. I would pass by it in the morning and evening, its presence both a relief and a rebuke. I had one. I had my grail back. So why did putting it on feel like a surrender? My parents came over for dinner. My mother's eyes went straight to the box. "You got it," she said, her voice soft, not a question. My father just gave a slow, approving nod. But his eyes held a complexity I couldn't quite read, pride in my resolve. "Sorrow for the cost." "I did," I said, not moving to open it. "Are you going to wear it?" My mother asked. "I don't know." The honesty surprised me. It feels like it belongs to a different story now. My story got ... rewritten. My father finally spoke. "You rewrote the ending, son? You took back the narrative. That's power. But you have to decide what to write on the next page. That watch can be a trophy of a war, or it can be a reminder to be wiser. But letting it gather dust, that's letting him win the last tiny piece." His words stuck with me. Letting him win. Was that what this was? A self-imposed exile from my own symbol of success because it had been tarnished. The financial machinery I'd set in motion began to turn. My aunt and uncle's first payment arrived, a direct deposit, far more substantial than Liam's pitiful check. A note accompanied the bank notification email just from my uncle. "First installment. Therapy starts Thursday. We will not fail you again." The clinical, transactional nature of it was both a relief and a new kind of weight. My family was now my debtor. The dynamics were forever altered. Then, a text. From Liam's number. It was the first direct contact since the tent. "Liam, I know you don't want to hear from me. I'm not asking for anything. Mom told me about the deal. About the therapy. I start tomorrow. I just needed to say thank you. For that. For making it about more than the money. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything." I stared at the message. The raw, unpolished shame in it was different from his performative tears at the reunion. This felt like the first true thing he'd said to me in years. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it. A few days later, Vance called. "Got an update you didn't ask for," he grunted. "Followed your cousin to his first therapy session. He went, sat there for the full hour. Looked like hell afterwards, but he went." "I didn't ask for surveillance, Vance." "You're paying my retainer. This is proactive service. Also, the night manager at the big box store says he shows up on time. Doesn't complain. Stock shelves like he's exorcising demons. Kids walking the plank you built for him." I thanked him and hung up. The image of Liam alone in a therapist's office, then stacking boxes in the fluorescent gloom of a warehouse aisle, was unsettling. It was the consequence I'd wanted. So why did it feel so empty? The answer came at my grandmother's smaller, more intimate birthday lunch, the one that wasn't the massive anniversary party. It was held at my parents' house. The air was palpably different. The easy, rambunctious noise of before was gone, replaced by careful, polite conversation. Liam was not there, of course. But his absence was a louder presence than anyone in the room. My grandmother pulled me aside on the sun porch, her gnarled hand gripping mine with surprising strength. "You did a hard thing, Julian. A necessary thing. But a family is like a bone. If it breaks and heals wrong, it's forever weak. It pains every time the weather changes." She looked out at the garden. "Your grandfather and I, we had a brother who stole from the family business. Not money. Client lists. He sold them. We had to let him go. Cut him out. It was the right business decision. It was the coldest day of my life. We never spoke again. I see his face in my dreams, still an old man asking why." She turned her milky blue eyes back to me. "I'm not telling you to forgive. I'm telling you to decide what kind of weather you want to live with. Chronic pain, or a clean break that heals strong even if it has a scar." Her words churned in me. I'd been so focused on the trap, the exposure, the reclamation, I hadn't thought about the forever after. The eternal climate of family events. The scar she spoke of was already there, lumpy and tight. Could it be strong? I went home and finally opened the box. I took the watch out. I wound it. The familiar, smooth tick filled the quiet room. I held it to my ear, the sound a tiny mechanical heartbeat. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I put it on. The weight was immediate. The cool metal against my skin. It felt foreign and familiar all at once. I looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back was older than the one who'd last worn it. His eyes were harder. The watch didn't look like a trophy. It looked like a piece of armor reclaimed from a battlefield. A week later, I was meeting a client at a high-end steakhouse. As I was being led to my table, I passed a private dining room. The door was ajar. Inside, at the head of a table of suited men, was Carl, the pawnbroker. He was laughing, holding court, a glass of whiskey in hand. On his wrist, flashing under the chandelier light, was a Patek Philippe. The profit from my Daytona had already been spent. Our eyes met through the gap in the door. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes grew cautious, then dismissive. He gave me the faintest, coldest nadir recognition between professionals who'd concluded a messy transaction. Then he turned back to his companions, the door swinging slowly shut. In that moment, any lingering anger about the buyback price evaporated. He was just a scavenger, feeding on other people's desperation. Liam had been the true villain of my story. And he was in a therapist's office and a stockroom, paying a different kind of price. Carl was just set dressing. After my client dinner, I sat in my car. I looked at the watch on my wrist in the dim garage light. I thought of my grandmother's weather. I thought of the chronic pain of a family forever, fractured, or the clean, scarred strength of a wound that had been properly set. I picked up my phone. I opened the text from Liam. I typed a reply. It took me 10 minutes to write 3 sentences. Me. Therapy isn't for me. It's for you. So you don't become a man who needs to be caught in a trap again. Keep going. I hit send before I could overthink it. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was an acknowledgement of the path he was on, the one I'd indirectly forced him onto. It was me deciding what to write on the next page. The 3 dots appeared immediately. They pulsed for a long time. Then a reply, Liam. I will. I am. That was it. No please, no excuses. Just a simple, stark commitment. It was the most honest exchange we'd had in a decade. I drove home. The watch on my wrist no longer felt like a weight. It felt like a compass. It had pointed me toward a hard truth, guided me through a brutal retaliation. And now, perhaps, it could point toward a future that wasn't defined solely by that betrayal. The scar was there. But as my grandmother said, a scar is healed tissue. It's the strongest part of the skin. I had set a trap to shock everyone. The final shock I was beginning to understand was the long, quiet journey after the explosion, and the person you had to become to walk through the debris. A year passed. The seasons turned with a quiet rhythm that felt both foreign and necessary. The watch was back on my wrist, not as a constant wear, but for important days, signing a new client, closing a deal, my parents' anniversary. It was no longer a seamless part of me. It was a chosen tool, a piece of reclaimed history with a cautionary tale etched into its steel. The scar, as my grandmother predicted, had healed strong. The financial transfers from my aunt and uncle arrived with the dull punctuality of a mortgage payment. There was no fanfare, no covering notes after the first one. It was business. The debt was being settled, and with each deposit, a subtle tension in the family tapestry loosened one careful thread. Liam stayed true to his word. Vance's sporadic, unprompted updates confirmed it. Therapy continued. The night job was grueling but held. And there were no more flagged transactions or whispers of old debts. I saw him once, from a distance. It was at a charity 5K my mother had roped the family into. He was near the back of the pack, running alone, head down, focused on the pavement. He looked leaner, older, not broken, but weathered. He didn't see me. I didn't approach. It was enough to see him there, part of the same event, under the same sky, doing the hard, unglamorous work of becoming someone else. The grand, dramatic silence of the reunion had settled into a new family, normala, polite. Careful distance where there had once been easy camaraderie. Holidays were smaller, conversations more deliberate. It wasn't the warm, chaotic love of before. It was something quieter, perhaps more realistic. A family that had looked into the abyss of one another's capacity for betrayal and mercy, and had decided, tentatively, to step back from the edge. My own life accelerated. The notoriety from the watch saga within my professional circle had an unexpected effect. I'd proven I was strategic, ruthless in protection of what was mine, and devastatingly effective. New clients sought me out. Not in spite of the story, but because of it. In the world of high-stakes deals, being known as someone who could orchestrate a flawless trap was a perverse kind of credential. I leaned into it. The armor I'd forged now serving a professional purpose. One afternoon, thick envelope arrived by courier. It was from my aunt and uncle's lawyer. Inside was the final payment statement, a sum that zeroed out the balance of the debt. And a single formal line, per the agreement, the obligation is hereby satisfied. There was no personal note. The silence of that conclusion was louder than any celebration. The transaction was complete. Justice of a financial, contractual kind had been served. That night, I sat in my study, the statement on my desk. I took off the watch and laid it beside the paper. The two objects, side by side, told the whole story. The loss, the trap, the reclamation, the price. I had it all back. And yet, I had lost something intangible that could never be repaid. My phone buzzed. A notification from a shared cloud album I'd almost forgotten about. Family archives. Someone had uploaded new photos. I clicked. It was pictures from my grandmother's recent garden party. There I was, talking with my father. There were my parents, smiling. And in one wide shot near the edge of the frame, helping my grandmother carry a tray, was Liam. He was looking at her, not at the camera, his expression soft, attentive. He was there, not in the center, not as he once was, but present, acknowledged. A ghost allowed back at the periphery of the feast. I stared at the photo for a long time. This was the new weather. Not a storm, not a perpetual winter, but a climate with changed atmospheric pressure. Everyone breathing a little more consciously. A few days later, an invitation arrived. Engraved, formal. It was for my cousin Chloe's baby shower, the same Chloe whose wedding had been the scene of the theft. The circle was closing. I knew Liam would be invited. This would be the first real test. The first time we would be in the same intimate, celebratory space since the tent. I decided to go. I wore the watch. The shower was held in a sunny, flower-filled conservatory. The mood was joyful, focused on the new life coming. I felt the usual glances at my wrist, the unspoken recognition from those who knew the story. I moved through the room, congratulating Chloe, making small talk. And then I saw him. He was standing by the gift table, looking awkward in a button-down shirt that seemed too big. He saw me at the same moment. The familiar panic flashed in his eyes, followed by a forced calm. He gave me a small, stiff nod. I nodded back. And then, I did something I hadn't premeditated. I walked over. The few feet between us felt like a mile. The surrounding chatter seemed to hush in my ears. I stopped in front of him. We didn't hug. We didn't shake hands, Liam. I said, Julian, he replied. His voice was steady, but quiet. We stood in silence for a beat. The ghosts of tree forts and stolen watches hovering between us. You look well, I finally said. It was true. You too. He glanced, just for a fraction of a second, at my wrist. He didn't flinch. He just took it in. I'm glad you got it back. Me too. Another pause. This one was less charged. It was just the awkward space between two people who shared a catastrophic history. Therapies? Good, he offered, volunteering it like a peace offering. Hard, but good. I'm glad to hear it. He met my eyes then, and for the first time since before the wedding, there was no lie in them. Just a weary, clear-eyed look of someone who has been through the fire. What you did, it was brutal. It was what I deserved, and in a screwed-up way, it was what I needed. Thank you. It wasn't an apology for the theft. That was too vast. It was a thank you for the consequence. It was the only honest thing left to say. I accepted it with a slight nod. Take care of yourself, Liam. You too, Jules. I turned and walked back to join my parents. The conversation had lasted less than a minute. It changed nothing, and it changed everything. The trap had been sprung, the debt paid, the watch reclaimed. This was the final quiet click of the mechanism settling into place. Not a resolution, but an equilibrium dot at the end of the party. As I was leaving, my grandmother caught my hand. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, went from my face to the watch and back again. She didn't say a word. She just squeezed my hand, her grip still surprisingly strong, and gave a single, slow nod. It was a benediction, an acknowledgement that the bone, though forever scarred, was now bearing weight again. It would ache when the weather changed, but it would not break. I drove home, the watch cool against my skin. The shock of the trap had long since faded. The silence it created had been filled with the slow, hard work of aftermath. And I realized as I pulled into my garage that the greatest shock of all wasn't the exposure at the reunion. It was the discovery that after the drama, after the revenge, after the thrilling victory, you are left with the quiet, lifelong task of living with what you've done, who you became to do it, and the forever altered landscape of your life. The trap had caught the thief. But in the end, we were all living inside its carefully constructed walls, learning to breathe the new air.